Hello, and welcome to Project Discovery, a special program produced by the South Carolina Department of Education and South Carolina ETV. I'm Betty Jamison with eMedia, part of the South Carolina Department of Education. And this is my co-host, Tanisha Polite with ETV.
Thank you, Betty. It is great to be in Charleston at the South Carolina Aquarium, which opened in May of 2000 on the historic Charleston Harbor. Today on Project Discovery, we'll get up close and personal with some of the salt marsh inhabitants right here at the South Carolina Aquarium.
That's right. In addition to visiting the aquarium, we're going to take a field trip to a barrier island with a group of middle school students from Clay Hill Middle School in Dorchester School District 4. So joining us from Barrier Island Eco Tours on the Isle of Palms is our co-host, David Moore. Hello, David.
Hi, David.
Hey, Betty and Tanisha.
Plus, we are so excited that naturalist Rudy Mankey will be on hand for the entire program of Project Discovery.
Great science content for South Carolina students. Let's get started by learning more about the South Carolina Aquarium. The South Carolina Aquarium's staff and volunteers work daily to inspire conservation of the natural world through exhibiting and caring for animals, by excelling in education and research, and by providing visitors with an unforgettable experience. Home to more than 10,000 animals and plants, such as loggerhead sea turtles, an albino alligator, pufferfish, and more, visitors are amazed once they step inside the state-of-the-art facility. The aquarium's largest exhibit, the Great Ocean Tank, holds more than 385,000 gallons of water and contains more than 300 animals, including 5 different species of sharks. Visitors also now have a chance to embark on a journey to the world's most biologically diverse island, Madagascar. Guests of all ages will have the chance to get face-to-face with lemurs, eye-to-eye with chameleons, and nose-to-nose with some of the world's most colorful marine life. The South Carolina Aquarium is also home to several conservation initiatives, including the popular Sea Turtle Rescue Program. The aquarium is home to the state's only sea turtle hospital, where staff and volunteers aid sick and injured turtles and bring them back to full health with the goal of releasing them back into the wild. Just outside the aquarium, its 4D theater makes visitors feel as if they've just become part of a movie. The theater combines 3D imagery, interactive seating, and waves of special effects, all synchronized to a film.
Thanks, Betty. We are here at the South Carolina Aquarium in Charleston, and I am joined by 2 of the best educators here at the aquarium. We have the lovely Miss Shelley Deerhart and the very handsome Jonathan Ivy. So, the first thing that I'm going to ask you, since the topic for Project Discovery is about salt marshes, and we're actually in the salt marsh exhibit, what is a salt marsh? Shelley, we'll start with you.
A salt marsh is an incredible ecosystem, very unique. It's actually it's a tidally influenced coastal area where all of the fresh water that is coming through the upstate empties out into the ocean and mixes with the tide as it comes in. So it's what we call a brackish water, and that's just a mixture of fresh water and salt water. So it's not quite as salty as the ocean, but it's not nearly as fresh as those freshwater rivers emptying out into the marsh area. So it's always along the coast, right near an estuary typically, and it is incredibly diverse. There are changes going on all throughout the day. We have just numerous different types of wildlife living in the salt marsh, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful ecosystem.
Okay, and speaking of that, since you said that the salt marshes are it's just a beautiful ecosystem, tell us, why is it so important to our ecosystem?
Absolutely. There are a number of reasons that salt marshes are important to us. One of those is that it acts as a buffer system. And so when a big storm comes along, when it gets to be hurricane season in our neck of the woods, it can buffer those coastal areas so that it doesn't cause a lot of erosion, taking that land away from our coast. And so that's just one purpose. Another one is actually that it acts as a filter system. So I mentioned those freshwater rivers emptying out into the marsh before they actually get out into the ocean. Well, the factors of the salt marsh, like pluff mud and that the beautiful tall grass, Spartina grass that lives in that marsh. It can really, all of that really helps to filter out any chemicals, pollution, sediments that would get out into the ocean and potentially affect the wildlife out there. Another final just really important reason is that it acts as a nursery for a lot of young fish and animals so that they have a nice protected area where there's an availability of food and they just stay there until it's time for them to go out into the big blue ocean.
Wow, wow. Just from listening to that, I can understand why salt marshes are so important.
Absolutely.
So, Jonathan, like I said, we are actually here in a salt marsh exhibit at the aquarium. Can you tell us what visitors can see when they come to visit the aquarium?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We can see all sorts of really cool animals and plants here in the salt marsh. And our salt marsh, like Shelley was talking about, our salt marsh is set up to be kind of a nursery. A lot of our animals are kind of small when they're in the salt marsh, and eventually they grow up and end up in the great ocean tank. But we can see lots and lots of different types of fish. We also have turtles, really cool turtles that we'll talk about later called terrapins. Lots and lots of different bird species here as well. And just kind of really, really cool plants as well. So we have some palms in the background. We've got some Spartina grass, which is also what Shelley mentioned earlier. But yeah, those are all the really cool things. We also have another exhibit inside this exhibit, a stingray exhibit, which is really cool. And that's where people can actually come, they can buy food, and they can feed the stingrays, which is a really fun experience for young kids especially.
Okay, that just sounds very awesome. Well, we've gotten a little bit more information about the importance of salt marshes, as well as what you can see when you come to the South Carolina Aquarium to visit the salt marsh. Thank you so much again. I told you these were the two best educators here, so make sure when you come to the aquarium, you see Shelley and Jonathan. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Back to you, Betty.
Teachers and students across South Carolina are exploring beyond the classroom, using the outdoors and nature as a living textbook for real-world, hands-on learning. Let's join students with Clay Hill Middle School in Dorchester School District 4 for an outdoor field investigation at Capers Island. Barrier Island Eco Tours education specialists engage students using science and math to explore the environment firsthand.
Here at Barrier Island Eco Tours, one of the things we've been able to do is take a standard trip that we know a tourist would enjoy and look at the components of that and break it down specifically into the standards per grade level. And we feel real lucky with Eco Tours that we get to take the educational standard and make sure we're solid on the educational standards of that, but to make it relate to everyone. It's a standard of living. It's a standard for a quality of life that we feel like is important, not just to the animals in this ecosystem, not just to kids who live along the coast, but to everyone in South Carolina. Those standards apply for a reason. The male has a narrow abdominal plate right there. The female, see how her big round abdominal plate, check it out. It looks like and would work like a kangaroo's pouch. And do you know what she would put in that pouch? Eggs. Let me show you, because it's pretty cool looking. See that orange, yellow, spongy mass under her belly? How many of you have had eggs in the last 5 days for breakfast? When you cracked those eggs in a frying pan, what was the color you saw? Yellow. Kind of that same color that's under her tummy. You know what she's got right there? That yellow, spongy, orange, spongy mass? Eggs. As many as 500,000 eggs right there. She's gonna hold on to them for about 2 more weeks. They're gonna brown, they're gonna turn brown. That would be 500,000 eyes looking back at us. And then she's going to make her way to an inlet and begin fanning her abdominal plate and releasing them.
I use field studies to teach my standards to help reinforce what we might have gone over, and I also like to use them in the middle of teaching it so that they can get hands-on experiences with what they're learning to help them retain the information and make better connections to it. Using the outdoors helps me be a better teacher because it really taps into my students' interests, and especially with science, a lot of kids dislike science, and when you get them outside and they realize that this is what science is, they really get into it, and I feel it helps me better in my classroom because they pay attention to me a little bit more, knowing that this is something that they do get to experience.
Every student needs to learn about our marine environment because we are all interconnected, whether it's the water that we're drinking, whether it's the 2/3 that our body is made up of water. South Carolina has mountains to the sea. The beaches that we walk on are our eroded mountains. What you put in the river at the beginning of the river, the watershed, it trickles down and it affects us every single day. Yeah, ooh. We have a little spider. Ooh, this is also really neat. This marsh grass has been in the water for so long that we have another crustacean growing on it. We have barnacles right here. So pass those around and check out those little barnacles. And we're gonna pass around the sea pickle. Who wants to try a piece? Who's brave enough? Okay. It tastes good. I like it. I taste it. When you're in a classroom, you see a slide of an edible plant or an animal, but to actually pick it up and just hold it in your hands, to see that bird diving, to taste that glasswort or sea pickle, there's nothing that replaces that. It just shows tangible knowledge. I remember things better when I get to touch them, see them, taste them, smell them, and I'm sure that these children do too.
We got to go get to the alligators and catch it crabs.
The best way I like to learn is field trips because we get a better experience of doing things, and it's a lot of fun. It was fun catching fish and crabs because, like, I never hold a fish and crab before. They feel like spiders crawling all over me. I don't want to go back to school because this is a fun field trip.
To see those crabs scurrying around and grabbing little bits and being picked up and having crabs crawling up your arms, there's nothing like that. To see a kid who's never been to the beach experience all of those things all in one day. It's just incredible. Can't hurt you. Can I go down there? Do you see them? Do you guys see them right there? They're in these little holes. Guys, check out this fiddler crab right here. Do you see how he has a very big claw? Look at that big claw. That is what he uses to attract the baits. He waves at the pretty crabs that are going by. He does what we call a little disco dance.
When it comes to the things that students experience, Courtney and I, the naturalists, we feel equally as lucky as the kids. Today's a great example. All of a sudden, we're going to tell these kids about sea turtles, and we've got a sea turtle skull on the boat, a prop we use, and instantly, boom, there's a sea turtle here in the marina. So it's the true teachable moment. We're not having to fabricate it or create it, and it gives us that wow experience. It gives us a chance to go, wow, now let's look at this. And if you can get that wow first, then the looking at it's not schoolwork. It's fun. It's real world science. It's hands-on. Heck yeah, let me get my hands dirty and muddy. Let me catch that. Let me see that. Let me hold that. For South Carolina students, it doesn't really matter whether you're in the mountains, Midlands, or on the coast, whether you eat seafood or not. There's not one of us in South Carolina that is not in one way or another affected by our coast. Whether it's the harvesting of our seafood, whether it's the development of our coastal areas, whether it's the ports and what comes in through our ports, whether it's a kid on a lake in Greenville, that water is going to end up in our ocean.
As a student, I can pick up litter and keep it from getting in the ocean because plastic bags and other things can be mistaken as food for other animals.
The ocean's healthy, the fish are healthy, and so if people eat fish, they get healthy.
Everyone in South Carolina is like a food web that occurs here. We are all connected. Whether or not you live in the mountains and you have a stream in your backyard, or whether or not you have a dock right out your backyard and you can see the marsh, we are all connected. The animals that utilize this area, the migratory birds, it's just all interconnected, and if we all pool our resources and take care of this environment, we'll guarantee that it will be here for generations to come.
The state reptile in South Carolina, believe it or not, doesn't live all over the state. It's a sea turtle with a really large head compared to the size of the body, so we call it the loggerhead sea turtle, and this is the skull of a loggerhead sea turtle. Big openings for the eyes. You see where the nostrils would be there. No teeth in this skull at all. You know, birds and turtles don't have any teeth at all. They crush their prey really with that flat point on the end and that flat bone right there. And they feed on a lot of shellfish, and they feed on jellyfish and such, and they change, of course, that material into sea turtle.
Only on Project Discovery will you be able to get an exclusive inside look at one of their greatest animals in the salt marsh. So Shelly, can you tell us a little bit about this animal? Tell us what it is and why is it important to the salt marsh ecosystem?
Absolutely. This right here is a diamondback terrapin, and they are the only turtle to live exclusively their whole life in a salt marsh, which is a pretty amazing thing. Their skin is very unique, and so they're able to tolerate that, you know, somewhat salty water that we talked about a little bit earlier, that brackish water. And so it's not very permeable to water or salt, which allows them to stay very long periods of time in that brackish water. And they are incredibly important. They help to maintain a balanced food chain. They're typically feeding on little periwinkle snails and fiddler crabs, and they're also part of the food chain in the other respect as well. So predator and prey relationships, and so they are a very, very unique and fabulous species living in our salt marshes.
Okay, well tell us, what do they generally eat in the salt marsh?
Typically, they're going to be eating the small little periwinkle snails and those fiddler crabs that like to play on the mud banks. And they have an incredibly strong beak right there. You can see right on the end of his little face, and he can crunch through hard shells from those snails and the fiddler crabs. And so it makes it a little easier to get to the good stuff on the inside.
Okay, Jonathan, can you tell me, how can you differentiate the male from the female terrapin?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And there are a couple different ways of telling the difference. And in our exhibit in particular, the best way, the fast and easy way of telling them apart is the males are a lot smaller than the females. So the female, this would be a female. The females are a lot larger than the males. And it's funny because kids come here and they say, oh, look, it's a mom and a baby. But really, it's a mom and maybe a dad, right? So the little males will kind of follow the females around and that type of thing. But also, if you look in the plastron of the turtle, which is the underside of the turtle, females are kind of flat on their belly, right? Males would actually be a little bit concave, so there'd be a little bit of a dent in there. So that's another way. If you get a closer look at a turtle, that's another way to tell the difference between males and females.
Now, do animals that generally live in a salt marsh, do they typically reproduce rapidly, or is there any type of threat of extinction with the animals in a salt marsh?
That's a great question, and it really is species dependent. The biggest threat really for terrapins these days is actually either the threat of being caught in a crab trap or being hit by a car. And it's very, it's somewhat sex dependent, because the small males and the smaller females are the ones getting caught in those crab traps because they can get into the small hole and then they get stuck in there just like a crab would. And unfortunately, they're able to hold their breath for about an hour, but that's about it. So if they've been swimming around for 20 minutes or so and get caught in a crab trap, that doesn't leave them but 40 minutes to hopefully have somebody pull them up and take them out. So unfortunately for the small females and the males, the crab traps are a bit of a problem. For the females, they're often crossing causeways to find a good place to lay their eggs, and so they do get hit by cars. It's hard to see one of these little turtles when you're driving down the road, and so not only unfortunately does that hurt the adult female population, but it also could take away those small eggs inside of her as well.
And this is kind of the time period when these mothers would be coming out and laying their eggs. They lay their eggs on land. And you may have noticed over in our salt marsh exhibit over in the corner, we actually have a fence up, and that's to make sure that these guys don't climb out and flop down into our pathway. So we want to keep them up there because they will come out and lay eggs, and occasionally we even get little tiny baby terrapins swimming around in the salt marsh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, are the terrapins the type of animals that, I guess, how long can they be out of water? Or is it a certain amount of time that they can be out of water before, okay, they need that moisture from the water? Or how does that work with them?
That's a great question, and typically they are spending the majority of their time in the water. That's where they feel the most protected. That's where they can hide really well. They're incredibly cryptic animals, and so normally what you'll see if you're kayaking through a salt marsh is a tiny little head poking out of the water, and as soon as they know you're there, that goes away. And when they come out of the water, it's normally to bask in the sun, and so they are reptiles being cold-blooded, so they do need to, get their body temperature, their warmth from their environment. So they'll come out and stretch their little legs and get nice and warm before they go back in the water.
Okay, and then one last question, and we have to answer it quickly. What type of defense mechanism does the terrapin have? Quickly, Jonathan.
Well, just like any other turtle, they've got this hard shell here, right? So they can pull into their shell, and they can kind of hope that the predator would leave before they end up getting eaten. So they rely pretty heavily on their shell for protection.
Wow, that is very interesting. We now have some questions that we're going to take from some of the students.
Why do salt marshes smell strange?
Why do salt marshes smell? That's a really good question. Salt marshes are kind of smelly, and the reason for that is the pluff mud. So Shelley talked a little bit about pluff mud earlier, and pluff mud is basically that really thick, dense kind of slimy black mud that's in the salt marsh, and all sorts of things. That mud is made up of all sorts of organic matter. That means dead plants and animals. So decomposition, when things break down to become soil, is going on all the time. And salt marshes, when they die, they fall over and they start to decompose. Animals in the salt marsh that die decompose as well. And so all that decomposition makes the salt marshes smell really bad sometimes.
Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting. We have another question that we're going to take from one of our students.
What other kind of animals live in the salt marsh?
There are all sorts of animals that live in the salt marsh. As I mentioned, one of the most diverse ecosystems out there. Aside from diamondback terrapins and some of the birds that we mentioned, there are a variety of fish, red drum, black drum, there are puffer fish, there are also things like fiddler crabs and snails and river otters. As a matter of fact, there are even bottlenose dolphins that live in salt marshes.
Well, we're going to continue on with these questions if we have another one from our students.
I live far away from the salt marsh. How can I protect them?
That's a really good question, and a lot of the people that come to the aquarium don't live near a salt marsh, but how can we protect them if we don't live anywhere around? There are a lot of easy things we can do. We can clean up after others, because some people still litter, right? And we all know littering's bad, and so we can clean up after others. We can make sure that we don't litter ourselves, make sure that trash makes it in the proper receptacle, or in recycling, even better if we can recycle. And then also we can reuse plastic bags and things. So instead of going to the grocery store and getting a new plastic bag every time, it's better to take a fabric bag. That way we can reuse those, and those plastic bags aren't eventually making it into maybe a river, which washes down into the salt marsh. Lots of animals in the salt marsh might want to eat a jellyfish or something. Those plastic bags resemble jellyfish when they make it into the water, and so to protect those animals, it's a good idea to make sure those don't get into the rivers and things like that.
One other thing that you can do is actually, if you have the opportunity, go visit a salt marsh yourself, and then you can experience what an amazing place it is, and you can talk to other people about the importance of salt marshes in our environment and why it's so important to protect them.
Well, that is interesting. I feel like a kid in a candy store right now. Thank you so much. And thank you to the students for your questions. Back to you, Betty.
Thanks, students. Great questions. Let's go back to Capers Island. Clay Hill Middle School students get to see, taste, and touch as they learn about the wetlands and creatures in the marsh and sea.
Pulling up the crab traps for many people here in the Low Country, that is a lifestyle. That is a job that has been passed down from generation to generation. And teaching children about crab traps and why we're so lucky that we pull them up and they have all those crabs in there is just so important. It shows those children what we need to conserve, and we have examples all over the East Coast of what happens when you take too many crabs. And we've learned from those mistakes, so just showing them, here's what you can catch, fresh seafood right here. We would not have this if we did not have the water quality that we do, if we did not have the Spartina grass to filter out that pollution in the water. And it's just so important to protect that lifestyle of those crabbers. Those guys have been doing that for generations. To preserve that lifestyle is just very important. And it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. When you pull it up, you might have a sheep's head in there, you might have a decorator crab, stone crab, you might even have an octopus in there. You never know what you're gonna get.
So, This guy's not gonna last long out of the water. Sheep's head. This fish right here has teeth that are great for chewing on barnacles. Look at the stripes. In certain places, those stripes would blend in with the plants he's trying to hide behind. Those spikes, he can hold them down, but what's holding him up making him look like? Well, first thing I'm thinking is, how on earth am I going to get my mouth around him? How on earth am I going to grab him? The other thing is, he's real slippery. It's hard for me to hold him. So again, this is a small little sheep's head. I'm going to let him go. See, he's got gills over there on the side. He won't live long out of the water.
Kiss him for good luck.
Got to kiss him for good luck. Maybe we'll see him again when he grows up.
I'm already thinking of ways I can use this experience in my classroom. This will help with next year when I have them as 7th graders and I have to cover an ecology unit. I can refer back to this trip and the things that they've done here because this tapped in a lot with the ecology and food chains and food webs, and that will help. Some students have a hard time making those connections and realizing how it all goes together. Now that they've experienced it, that will be an easier thing to teach. And hopefully they can take this back and tell their parents about it, and maybe their parents can get more involved to help more of our students do activities like this or help with conservation efforts to maintain islands like that for the students to come to.
What I love about marine education, I see it's a hands-on science lab. Every day is a different lab. Every day is a different experiment. Every day is a surprise for me. But no matter what it is we find, you can always tie it back into the ecosystem that it represents and its place and part in that ecosystem. As a teacher, as an educator, it gives me a chance to tie in the real life of this marine environment with the requirements of what I have to teach kids for an educational system. It just allows me to make that education real with a point and with a purpose.
The staff here is awesome. They've been extremely nice. Some of our kids haven't really interacted with nature and this was their first time, and they've been amazing with them and they're very knowledgeable. The kids have been coming up with random questions for random things that they found, and both Robert and Courtney were able to tell them what those were and where they might find them and their roles in the local ecosystem. They're amazing.
What I want the kids to take away is the next time that they get to visit a beach, wow, we should pick up that plastic bag that we just walked by. We should care about that gentleman down the street that dumps his oil into the well because we know where it's going to end up. Wow, we really shouldn't build houses so close to the dunes because of the loggerheads, because of the seagulls. I want them to take that conservation idea back with them and to apply it to the ecosystem around them.
A class has been with us, or even just a family, even just a tourist has been with us. What we want them to go away with is two things. A generalized appreciation of the importance of a tidal salt marsh, to finally see the, wow, I never knew that. If they go home with one, wow, I never knew that, and one, I wonder why that, I love them to leave with a fact, but more important to me is to leave with the question of why. Because if we can just pick their interest, if we can get them to ask the question, they can find the answer. So the tidal salt marsh and this marine education program just gives us a chance to get kids asking the questions and seeking the answers.
Let's go back to visit Rudy Mankey in his awesome nature-filled office.
Shelled animals come in two forms, univalves with one part to the shell and bivalves with two parts to the shell. And they're very different in a variety of other ways too. Let me just stick this one under my arm. Bivalves are filter feeders. They open the shell up and they've got two little tubes, siphons they're called, that bring in seawater loaded with plankton. You filter out all the goodies and then you squirt out any waste material through the other siphon or tube. And this is a pretty big bivalve. This one's called the giant Atlantic cockle. Kind of pretty on the inside. And again, a big body on the inside. that now is gone. So bivalves are filter feeders. Univalves don't filter out plankton. This is a marine snail called a channeled whelk, W-H-E-L-K. It's a predator, and you know what the prey is for this? Bivalves. Takes this sharp edge of the shell, keeps this bivalve from closing up, and recycles it.
Hey, I'm David Moore from South Carolina Department of Education, and I'm here at the Isle of Palms Arena with Robert and Courtney, and they're from Barrier Island Eco Tours, and they're going to answer some of your questions. Let's go ahead with our first question.
If crabs lose their claws, will they grow back?
Who wants to answer that?
Crabs are a class of animals known as crustaceans. I always think crusty ocean things, and their bones don't actually grow with them, so they have to molt in order to grow. And when they molt, that's the phase at which we call them a soft-shelled crab. And that's when they can replace, or regenerate's the word, they can regenerate missing body parts. If you and I catch them during that soft-shelled phase, they might become part of our menu, but everything loves a soft-shelled crab. But yes, if a crab loses its claw or loses a leg, as long as it's not too many major body parts, those will grow back through a process known as molting.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Let's see if we got another question.
What can I do to protect the sea turtles?
Ooh, lots of things. Every time you go to the beach, if you're picking up trash, a plastic bag, a bubble gum wrapper, something as small as that, you can help out a sea turtle or another sea creature. Every time you go to the beach, if you build a sandcastle like so many people love to do, fill in your holes after you're finished creating the hole that's supposedly going to China. If you want to, you can also visit the South Carolina Aquarium, and there they have an amazing team of people that are working at the Sea Turtle Hospital. And just through your donations alone, that is what keeps that hospital going.
You just rescued.
Yes.
You all just rescued a sea turtle.
Yes, we did. We found one floating in Dewey's Inlet, and we pulled it into our boat. And the Sea Turtle Hospital met us here, and they took it away, and it's now at the South Carolina Aquarium. In the hospital, its name is Dewey's.
All right.
So even just keeping an eye out for them while you're out in the boat.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. All right, let's see if we have another question.
Will I sink in a marsh like quicksand?
That's a good one. It's called pluff mud. And they say that pluff is the sound it kind of makes as it sucks your feet into it.
Yeah.
You got a good chance of losing a shoe in a salt marsh. Pluff mud. Pluff mud's basically a nutrient-rich sediment at the bottom. And you'll sink down sometimes as much as to your knees, but there's some solidness underneath it. And that's the base from which the marsh grass is growing, but that's also where the nutrient-rich sediments are settling back down. So you're kind of sinking into the muck at the bottom of a great big bowl of seafood stew, but there's the bottom of the bowl down there.
You can get out. Sometimes you have to crawl out.
Or be pulled out.
Or be pulled out and pull your shoes out too. But you're not going to be bruised.
All right, we'll be back in a few minutes with Courtney and Robert to answer some more of your questions.
Thank you, David. I am here with the wonderful Jonathan, and he's one of the South Carolina educators here at the aquarium. So Jonathan, we're now going to talk about birds. Now, I think that birds are cool, but can you tell me why birds are really cool?
Yeah, birds are really cool. I'm glad you think birds are cool. I do too. Birds are really, really cool because they're way different than a lot of other animals, right? So they're able to fly, which is really cool. They're covered with feathers. No other animals in the world are covered with feathers, right? They've got a beak, right? They've got kind of scaly legs, and they live in all sorts of different areas. And here in the salt marsh, we have all sorts of birds that kind of specialize for life here in the salt marsh.
Okay, well, can you tell me a little bit about what types of birds kind of, roam around in the salt marsh?
Yeah, and we have lots and lots of different types of birds. Sometimes we can kind of break them down into wading birds, right? So birds that actually wade through the water, and they're kind of looking for fish. They've got a long beak, they're constantly looking down, and at the last second, they have a long neck as well. At the last second, they can kind of dart that beak in to catch fish.
Wow.
So we have wading birds. We have some very secretive birds called rails that hang out on the grass. You don't see them very often at all. If you've ever heard the phrase thin as a rail, that's where it comes from, because when you look at a rail from the front, they're very, very skinny. They're kind of little chicken-like birds almost, and you don't see them very often, but you hear them really often. And then there are lots of birds that like to spend a lot of time floating on the water. They have webbed feet. to kind of help them get around, like ducks. Pelicans have webbed feet, the gulls have webbed feet, and they're just kind of swimming around trying to see what they can munch on for the most part.
Awesome, and this guy back here is really making a lot of noise for us.
That's right, and you can hear that's actually called a laughing gull, and you can tell why it's called a laughing gull. It sounds like he's laughing at us.
I know, that's
Maybe
so cool, yeah. Now, do all birds basically eat fish, or do you have some birds that eat something else other than fish in the salt marsh?
You know, it kind of varies. In the salt marsh, a lot of the animals that we have here in our salt marsh exhibit eat fish for the most part. Lots of birds in the salt marsh, they'll eat insects and all sorts of other things. They'll eat fiddler crabs, just like we talked about the diamondback terrapins earlier. They'll eat fiddler crabs and things like that as well. But a lot of the birds that we have here at the aquarium in our salt marsh exhibit eat fish. And so we'll put out pans of fish for them a couple times a day, and they'll come by and grab a fish as they need it.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Are there any other cool, interesting facts that you can tell us about the birds that, you know, hang out in the marsh?
Well, we do have one kind of interesting bird, and I'm not sure if you guys have seen it. It's a really, really secretive bird, but it is one of those rails, and it's called a purple gallinule. So kind of keep your eyes open for a purple gallinule. It's a small bird, almost chicken-like bird. It's got a beak that looks like candy corn, so it's got kind of an orange and yellow and white striped beak. And they've got kind of long legs, and they're very quiet, and they're very compact, so they can kind of weave in between the grasses. But hopefully you'll see one of those while you're out here.
Okay, cool. So can you talk a little bit about how they actually, you know, catch their food, especially if they eat other things other than fish?
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of these guys will just kind of, like I talked about the wading birds, they'll catch fish that way, but they'll also kind of sneak up on fiddler crabs and things like that as well. One really cool feeding mechanism that these pelicans have that are behind us, these pelicans will soar at pretty good heights. Also, osprey do the same thing. And what they'll do is they'll dive, and they'll go head first, and they'll dive in and they'll grab a fish. They've got this really large beak that has a big throat pouch. They'll snack a big bit of water, and hopefully a fish will be in that water. They'll push the water out and they'll swallow the fish. Osprey will actually come down, they're a hawk, and they'll grab the fish with their talons.
Wow, wow. Like I said, birds are really cool and really interesting. And as you can see from what Jonathan told us, hey, they really are cool.
Now let's go back to visit Rudy Mankey in his awesome office.
Here's a detective challenge for you. Someone brought this into the office thinking that it was a skull. I think that's what he kept saying to me. Found it on the beach. He thought the skull was in this position. These were openings for eyes. There was a little nose ridge, and then he had these jagged edges. He thought those may be teeth. But this really isn't a skull at all, is it? It's very lightweight, so it tells me it's from a bird, but this really looks like two bones in one. One, the wishbone, that I guess you're familiar with, furcula is another name for it, and then the breastbone. And in most birds, they're separate. But in one bird that's very large, this is a good-sized bird, they fuse together, brown pelicans. You know this came from a brown pelican because of the fusion between these two parts of the skeleton. And of course, this ridge right here is where really big breast muscles are that move those wings, that allow the animal, after it's dived in the water and grabbed fish, to actually rise up again and fly.
Thank you, Rudy. We're back here with the lovely Shelly and the awesome and amazing Jonathan, and we're now going to take some questions from the students.
Where do birds fit in the food chain?
The birds in the salt marsh are a big part of keeping the food chain in balance, and they are not what we consider apex predators, which are at the very tip top of their food chain, but they do help to keep a balance of all of the fish populations that live in the salt marsh, so that one species or fish in general don't take over, so that everything does stay in balance. So they are consumers.
Right. And balance, of course, is very important.
Absolutely.
We have another question, I believe, from another one of our students.
Where do the birds come from?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question. A lot of people ask us why do we have a lot of these birds that seem like they're just fine flying around in our aviary? And the answer to that is that these animals are either injured or have been injured in the past, or are imprinted on humans, which means that when they first hatch out of their egg, if they come in contact with humans, pretty regularly, then they start to rely on humans for food and things like that. So all the animals, all the birds that we have out here in the salt marsh have wing injuries or might not be able to see very well, or they might depend too heavily on humans, and so they would never be able to survive in the wild.
Wow, that is very interesting about that imprinting. That is awesome. I think we have one more question from another one of our students.
How does a bird adapt to its environment?
Adaptations are anything that are going to be helping them to survive in the wild. So birds have all sorts of cool adaptations. They can be body parts, they can be behaviors. And one of my favorite adaptations of these types of birds is that they actually have hollow bones, which makes a lot of sense because a lot of these birds are going to be flying, using a lot of energy, looking for their food. And so they want to be as light as possible in order to conserve energy when they're looking for that food. So between hollow bones and a body full of feathers, they stay nice and light. They also have, depending on where they're living, mostly in the salt marsh, some birds have really long legs so that they can wade out into the tidal creeks and keep an eye out for little fish swimming by. Or obviously a duck maybe that's living around a marsh area. We have a few of those here in our exhibit. They're going to have those webbed feet to help them swim a little more efficiently in the water. So all sorts of great adaptations. Beaks are one more. Depending on what type of bird you are and what kind of food you're eating, your beak is going to be a little different. Again, with those wading birds, you see a nice long beak so that when they do see a fish, they can just dive their beak and their long neck into the water and grab that fish as it's swimming by.
Wow, see, this is why I think birds are very, very interesting. Thank you so much, and thank you again to our students for your wonderful questions.
Probably the simplest animals that we can look at are sponges. Some people don't even realize they're animals. And this one is called dead man's fingers sponge. Very common offshore in South Carolina. Sponges are mainly found, in oceans, but we have freshwater sponges too. Lots of pores here. So this group are called the poriferans, and they filter goodies out of the water. And they have a skeleton made out of a very squishy material. I love the name for the squishy material. We call it spongin, which makes pretty good sense. And sometimes there's some little heavier, sharper objects inside called spicules that hold this in place. But the cells are attached to that skeleton, and of course when they die they wash up on the beach. And the dead man's fingers idea, makes perfect sense as a common name.
All right, we're back here at the Isle of Palms Marina with Robert and Courtney, and we're going to answer a few more of your questions. Okay, go ahead. We have any questions?
How do you remember where you left your crab trap, and what do you put in it to attract the crabs?
Oh, wow.
That's a great question. Sometimes you feel like a squirrel that just has forgotten where they've misplaced their pecan. But other times we have these specific creeks, and we have a buoy that has our name and our phone number, and sometimes our address, and that is the indication that, hey, this is yours. We bait our crab traps with a wide variety of things, from chicken necks to dead fish that have been filleted and have just been thrown into the bait bucket.
When the fishermen come back with fish, we recycle what they've cut away.
Exactly. Or hot dogs. There's that too. Basically, they'll eat anything.
If you've ever been out in the boat, you've seen those floats, and they're either yellow floats with our name and phone number on them. Mm-hmm. Those are personal people's traps. But if you see dual-colored floats, those are commercial crabbers' traps. The color of the float helps you find your trap, and the color of the float tells you if it's a personal trap or someone else's.
You don't want to mess with somebody else's, right?
You don't want to mess with someone else's trap.
Okay.
It's
all right.
illegal. It's their lifestyle.
Yeah, that's true. All right, let's see if we have another question.
Why is the salt marsh empty sometimes and full the other times?
Looks pretty full out here now.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you can see the seawall behind us, but actually tide's going out. If you look at that grunge line or the dark line, you can see where the high tide would have been. Old planet Earth is affected by the moon. And if Courtney's head here was planet Earth and I was the moon, then the water on planet Earth would be being pulled towards me. So she'd have a lot of water on her right ear, a lot of water on her left ear, because for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So it would be high tide left and right ears, low tide facing back. But old planet Earth is always turning. So the high tide, the bulge of water on planet Earth follows the moon. That's a good question.
Okay, good.
And the sun has some gravitational pull too, but it's much farther away, so it has less of an effect.
Okay, good. Do we have another question?
How can I get my class to go on an eco tour?
Ooh, That sounds good.
You can find us online. We have a website. It's www.nature-tours.com. And you can also book a tour through our wonderful eco goddess, Morgan Ziegler, at home. And her number is 843-886-5000.
Or come visit us here at the Isle of Palms Marina.
Come and see us.
We got our boats, we got the water, and there's so many critters and creatures worth talking about in the tidal salt marsh.
We're always here.
You guys had some great questions.
Well, great. Well, thank you for joining us on Project Discovery, and we'll get back to the show now.
Thank you, David. We're back here with the lovely Shelly of the South Carolina Aquarium, and we're going to have a little bit of dolphin talk right now. And I think that dolphins are very fascinating sea creatures. However, in your salt marsh exhibit, we didn't see any. Could you please tell me why?
Absolutely, and there's a very good reason for that. One, the exhibit is entirely too small, and secondly, and more importantly, we are the only state where it's actually illegal to have dolphins, whales, porpoises, any of the group of animals known as cetaceans in a captive environment. And in my opinion, it's a really cool thing because right in our backyard, you can see them swimming in their natural habitat.
Okay, cool. Now, could you tell me a little bit about the different types of dolphins, please?
Sure. Well, the ones that we have mostly in our area are going to be the bottlenose dolphins. Typically, if you see a dolphin in the marshes or in the estuaries, it's going to be a bottlenose dolphin. And that's very different. A lot of people do call them porpoises, but they are very different. A few differences that you would notice that are just physical features are the snout. The snout on a bottlenose dolphin is much more elongate than the snout on a porpoise. The porpoise is much more blunted. You can also look at their dorsal fins, and the dorsal fin on a bottlenose dolphin is going to be slightly sickle-shaped or curved, and the porpoise is going to have more of a triangular-shaped dorsal fin. And also, you would notice just geographically speaking, typically porpoises do not come down this far. They like the cooler waters and stay kind of in the North Carolina region and above. So you can be pretty sure that if you do see something swimming around that looks like a dolphin, it's a dolphin, not a porpoise.
Okay, cool. So what types of adaptations do dolphins have to have in order to survive?
Absolutely. They are phenomenal animals and have so many cool adaptations. One of the main ones that people think of when they think of a dolphin is the adaptation to be able to echolocate. And that is basically a biological sonar system that they have where they're able to create 3D images of their environment without using their eyes. So it's pretty impressive. And they have a big kind of fatty lipid-like structure in the top of their head called a melon. And that's really where those signals come from. And when they come back, the scientists theorize that it comes back through the jaw, not through that same melon. So they can get the image back through the jawline, it goes to the ears, and then they can create the 3D image in their brain.
Okay.
It's pretty amazing.
Okay, that does sound cool. Now, I guess that would be a unique feature about the dolphin. However, what type of defense mechanisms do they use in order to not be, I guess, attacked by any other sea creature?
Sure thing. And typically, if it's going to be another sea creature, it's going to be probably a dolphin that is preyed upon only if they're sick or wounded, and it might be a shark that does that. Typically, they don't have too many other predators in our area that they have to worry about. So it's mainly just making sure that they stay healthy and that we're not affecting their environment negatively so that they can maintain a healthy status.
Right. Okay. So what types of things do dolphins eat, or how do they stay, I guess, healthy and alive?
Right. Sure. Well, and it's mostly a fish diet. That's probably their favorite. They have about 88 to 100 very conical, sharp teeth that they can snap a little fish with, and that's typically what they're eating. They have some really unique feeding behaviors. I think we briefly touched a little earlier on strand feeding and how that's very unique in our area, where they heave their bodies out of the water onto the mud banks and catch all the fish that they've kind of rushed up in that general direction. But a few other ways that they feed that is fairly unique is something called tail whacking, where they will actually slap the water with their tail, stunning a fish that might be just underneath. And that fish would basically stay put long enough for the dolphin to swim back around and gobble them up. So it's kind of a very nifty little behavioral adaptation that they've learned on their own.
So are dolphins endangered species, or are they pretty plentiful?
Bottlenose dolphins, they're not endangered, especially in our area. There are plenty of bottlenose dolphins out there, but that's not always going to be the case if we don't work to protect them.
Okay, so can you tell us, how can we protect the dolphin's habitat?
Absolutely. First and foremost, don't pollute. And if you do happen to go out and see that somebody else has hopefully only by mistake, left some trash out there, pick it up and dispose of it properly. If it can be recycled, make sure you recycle it. If it needs to go into the trash, then make sure that it does go into the appropriate bin. But some other great things too, just think about your daily choices. Make sure you're not contributing to any chemicals that enter the ocean. Don't flush your pharmaceuticals, because those do end up into the ocean and they do affect the health of our dolphins.
Awesome.
The state shell of South Carolina, what is it? And why is this the state shell? Well, it's one of the olives. The shape of the shell gives it the name. And it looks like it has actual lettering on it. So lettered olive is the common name, first described by a South Carolina naturalist. Ravenel was his name. And this shell doesn't get much farther north than right here. It gets into North Carolina a little bit, the ocean off of North Carolina, and then much more common south. Lettered olive, one of the univalves. And since this is the state shell of South Carolina, why not compare it to the state shell of North Carolina, which is called a Scotch bonnet. Kind of has a neat little look to it. And there's where the body of the animal came out. And if it was fresher, you could see a little Scotch plaid on it. So Scotch bonnet is the common name. Both of the state shells of North and South Carolina are univalves, right? Just one part to the shell. So one of the marine snails.
Thank you, Rudy. We're back again, like I said, with the amazing Shelly and Jonathan. And we're here, as you can see, the beautiful Riverside Terrace at the South Carolina Aquarium. And at this time, we're going to take a few questions from the students.
What should I do if I see a dolphin in the wild?
You see a dolphin in the wild, the best thing that you should do is make sure to just appreciate the moment and let it be. Take a picture if you'd like, if you have a nice zoom lens, but the worst thing that we can do is actually try and approach that animal. It's actually illegal to try and do that. The Marine Mammal Protection Act, which was enacted in 1972, made that illegal to chase, harass, touch, interact with any wild marine mammal. And so really, if they are out in the water and you happen to be there, you are a very lucky individual, and just like I said, appreciate that moment, but don't try and interact with them.
Wow, that's a very interesting fact. We're going to take another question from one of our students.
I've heard fishing gear can sometimes hurt dolphins. How does it hurt them?
Fishing is a fantastic sport as long as you're fishing responsibly. And I think to be a responsible fisherman, A, you need to be licensed, and B, you need to make sure that when you go out, everything that you take with you, you're bringing back with you. The biggest problem with fishing impacting dolphins and other marine life is what we call ghost gear. And basically that's discarded monofilament fishing lines, or even lost crab traps, that sort of thing. That can be a problem to a lot of marine life, and dolphins included. They've recently started doing some research on how crab trap ropes can affect a dolphin, because they're very curious animals, and so they do try and interact with that rope, and that can be detrimental. So they're potentially looking at ways to lessen that impact.
Oh my goodness, that's really interesting questions. Let's take another one.
I see dolphins jumping out of the water all the time. What are they doing?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. Nobody really knows exactly what they're doing when they do that. Some theories include getting rid of parasites, maybe jumping out of the water and splashing back in can get rid of some parasites and things like that. Perhaps maybe communication, that they might be using that to communicate in some way, or they might just be having fun. That might just be a fun activity for them. So nobody really knows for sure, but those are some theories as to why they might be doing that.
Oh, wow, cool. You continue to say that there are certain laws and everything protecting the dolphins, and you said marine wildlife. Why is that? What's so special about these animals?
Well, I think just knowing that we have a negative impact on something, it's that we can always change our behavior to make things better. But in addition to that, we want to protect what's out there in our ocean. Dolphins specifically are indicator species. If they're not healthy, that shows us that our oceans aren't healthy. And it's really our responsibility to take care of this earth and to make sure that we are protecting it. And that includes the dolphins and just wildlife in general.
Wow. Again, thank you so much. Shelly Dearhart and Jonathan Ivey, they are awesome. Thank you so much. You made this a wonderful experience.
Now, let's go back to visit Rudy Mankey in his awesome office at the University of South Carolina.
Pretty interesting little animal here. Horseshoe crab is the common name for it, and you can see all those jointed legs in it. Not really a true crab, more closely related to scorpions, but almost looks like a Swiss Army knife. I mean, it's got a leg that can do just about anything. This is the cover for the book Lungs. And that horseshoe shape, let me just turn it over so you can see it. There's the horseshoe shape, so horseshoe crab is the common name. It's got compound eyes on the front, jagged edges along the sides, and then that really long tail, very closely related to scorpions. And that little tail right here doesn't have any way to sting you or anything, but that gives you a notion that it's more closely related to scorpions than it would be to the true crabs. Very common in South Carolina, living offshore, taking invertebrates and recycling them, changing it into horseshoe crab. Interesting blue blood in this animal that's very useful in experimentation.
Wow, we've discovered so much about our saltwater marshes, very important coastal habitats in South Carolina, and learned about some very interesting creatures along the way. Right, Tanisha?
Yes. The South Carolina Aquarium is the home to over 6,000 plants and animals. However, Project Discovery just scratched the surface because there's so much more to learn and explore, from the mountains to the sea, right here at the South Carolina Aquarium.
We'd like to thank the South Carolina Aquarium, Barrier Island Eco Tours, and especially thank you to the students and teachers at Clay Hill Middle School. And thank you for participating on this edition of Project Discovery.